Hello, and welcome to the podcast There Are No Good Games, where we discuss our opinions on past, present, and future games, as well as a whole load of other filler to keep us sane while we wait for a good game to play. Let's begin. So obviously, as you know, its date of recording is roughly towards the period of Halloween. One of the things I'm always confused about, or trying to get a handle on, is why horror games seem to fall into two things, which is basically like your main character's helpless and can't do anything, needs to hide from everything, including aliens, psychopaths, and monsters. Or it falls into the other bracket, which is you're currently trying to fight demons with shotguns and blow through enemies wave by wave, but you have a limited amount of ammo.
Well, that's the concept. It's either survival or gore, really, isn't it? I mean, obviously a mix of both sometimes, but I guess like in, I guess the classic is like Resident Evil, isn't it? Where it's, I mean, it depends. Like, I guess Resident Evil has changed over the course of like from 1 to 8. But if you've like, even I think they all kind of have you got low ammo and you need to think about that carefully, even though somehow at the end you still got loads of ammo because you just saved it all. It's kind of a health pack kind of problem where you just constantly save health and food because you might need it later and then you never do because you just saved it. So I guess that's an issue for ammo as well. But I think are they just the easiest kind of games to make? I mean, I guess when you're shooting, there's kind of like more gore games. I guess like Doom. That's I
Doom
kind of
an action game though, right?
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, but I mean, like, you would say it's horror. I mean, you could say Diablo is horror, really, couldn't you? I guess we're back to this genre topic of what is and isn't a genre, but I think they all fit under the kind of horror aspect, don't they? But yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan necessarily of like the gore action horror games. I like the more horror games, which are more either psychological horror or, there's a lot of story and exploration in it. I guess like Amnesia, The Dark Descent, that's the pinnacle of horror games for me. Like when that all kicked off.
Well, like manage your sanity, keep to the light, and then also try and explore and get through as much as you can, like a period of time.
Yeah, because I guess there's kind of a story with that one. There was a story that I think there was like a kind of monologue that kept going occasionally. But then also, you have a monster that you do run into occasionally. And I guess there's the aspect of puzzles and avoiding the monster when they do like their pathing. So I think like that's cool. But then, you have this massive castle to explore as well in that game. So I kind of like that. That's like what I like in a horror game, like good level design and a story. And I guess some good you're never, I think like the best horror games are the ones that you don't know what's going to happen next.
Like I think a good way to kind of contextualize it for me is like one of the few horror games I really liked was Resident Evil 2, the remake, where it's like Escape from Raccoon City. Like level design was really good. It was compartmentalized very well. There was like a variety of things going on at once. So you had like for the first act, it's kind of learning all about like the building, trying to get an idea of how the puzzles work, dealing with the zombies, dealing with ammunition, which is good. The second bit was like, oh, here's Mr. X, who's like a creature that's going to keep on following around the entire level that you've already known at this point, and it's kind of to put some time pressure on you. Like that sort of stuff was always really cool because it builds on techniques and ideas. I just feel like sometimes horror games throw everything at you at once and just overwhelm you rather than actually try and teach you how to play a game. Like Outlast, I think is a good example because you start off, you get given a video camera, you have to learn about batteries, you have to learn about the light, and you have to learn to hide from stuff all at the same time. But there's not really a reason to kind of push forwards apart from like this, in my opinion, very weak plot where you have to go try and uncover the horrors of this asylum.
Sure.
And I think one of the things that makes horror games good is it's something that you kind of makes you want to finish it off, makes you want to get out, makes you want to survive. I think Dead Space did something like that as well, where you kind of go through Dead Space, killing stuff, trying to get out, and you've got like a purpose, you've got a reason to escape. You've been brought on there for like reasons out of your control because you're an engineer. You have to work your way out of there. Well, I feel a lot of good, air quotes, horror games is you're stuck, you're trapped. You have to hide from stuff for the entire time, and then eventually you get to escape your way out. Or at the very end of the game, you get given the plot armor or the plot gun or weapon to then defeat the creature and get out of here.
I think the gameplay loop for a lot of those games of like the classic horror games and what you probably will find a lot of on Steam are all based around those things. You know, you either hide, you have some sort of battery thing. I mean, there's like an asset on the Unity store, which is like the horror classic pack, and it just has all that built into it. And it's like it's effectively like drag and drop scripts onto objects, drag and drop models that are already in the thing, and it's there. Like that is like the classic kind of horror survival-esque kind of game you've got going. Have you ever seen or heard of Iron Lung, the game?
Is this the submarine one?
Submarine, yeah, where you're in like a sea of blood on some moon or something like that. Yeah, it kind of came out.
I've heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah, it came out a while ago. I think like maybe like 2 years ago. I mean, Markiplier's played it and then is making a film now. He's like doing a film now for it, which is coming out in cinemas, I presume, early next year. And so, yeah, I mean, but that game is like is a short game. You're literally just encompassed within this submarine, which you move around by clicking effectively 3 different buttons. And then you have to take pictures of stuff. So, you have to use like this map, the coordinates to work out where you are on the map, and then you take pictures. But, it's about the unsettling nature of being underwater alone. And you kind of hear stuff, around you. The kind of radar goes off when something's circling around you at different points. And that's like
atmospheric.
Atmospheric. That kind of uniqueness of that horror game. It doesn't follow the natural cycle that a lot of the other ones do. I think that's really interesting. And like those type of horror games are good. I mean, we both of us have played Granny 3. Probably one of the cheapest horror games possibly that's ever been made and released. But the guy who makes that, he clearly, he actually, as awful as the game looks, he actually does have quite like a good design of like how he designs the levels, how the randomness affects like it's repeatable, the difficulty, the walking around the house, which is still like a small map, but you're basically doing puzzles in quick succession while avoiding something. But it's not like some built out long game like Outlast or like an Amnesia or something like that. And so like those like short horror games, you probably use the same amount of time to play around a Granny than it is to play Iron Lung. Maybe Iron Lung just lasts slightly longer, maybe. But I think like those ones are kind of like where horror is getting better in the kind of area of it. I mean, we recently, I sent you a game recently that was free. Voices of the Void, I think it's called.
Yes.
Where effectively you're in some remote area in the middle of nowhere, and you've got to use basically satellites, and you try and basically get signals from these satellites to and you kind of got to work them out, and you got effectively like missions, I guess daily missions to get certain signals and amount and upgrade them, etc. While random stuff happens throughout the 30-40 days the story mode takes place on. I find that quite a unique game because it's all based around one thing. You kind of know the gameplay loop, which is your job, but then you've got all these other things that happen.
So I think stuff like that was like smart holistically, like Voice from the Void was atmospheric. You kind of feel it's a day and night cycle, and there's other bits to do. But I think it's like sound design is really important in it, and like I don't know, Voice from the Void actually like quite enjoys negative space when it's kind of doing its sound. Like it's not trying to build this world, it's just trying to keep you like on your toes. You occasionally hear like the weird glimmers of something or like the weird creaks and cracks, and that kind of keeps you informed. It's a bit like well, the 2 games that you suggested that I play, the hacker one and the
Welcome to the Game.
Yeah, what's the other one called?
What recently came out? Yeah, what is the recent one that just came out?
I wouldn't say like Contingent, but that's wrong. It's like Scrutinize.
Scrutinize the one, but the guys just released another one, which Dead Signal.
Okay.
Which is actually.
I saw it. It looked like
yeah.
It looked like the other game that we talked about, like Voice from the Void.
Yeah, kind of. It's a mix of kind of like Welcome to the Game, but a series of games which is like I'm on observation duty kind of thing where you're watching cameras and stuff. But this is much more horror-esque than more of a puzzle game. Yeah,
but I think that stuff kind of works because it's grounded in realism to a degree. Like, I think my issue with what's it called? Oh boy, what's that game called? What's the horror one called that we just talked about? Outlast. Thank you.
Outlast, right? Yeah.
Outlast is just like, oh, I'm a reporter. I need to go into this abandoned, dodgy-looking mental hospital and work out what's going on here because the doctor experimenting on people on a Friday night because that's what I feel like, and it's locked until Monday. That makes perfect sense. I'll definitely go do that. But it's like, I think grounded in realism is probably the thing that probably gets me realistically, and also the fact that you can do stuff to prevent things from happening, but you can't stop it all. Like the Welcome to the Game stuff, you're trying to hack, you're trying to learn to do the basics, but when you get kind of invested in something, you suddenly realize that someone might be in the room with you, and it's that
and
sort
you've
of
got to
stuff.
keep checking stuff as you're playing.
Yeah, like the only thing I think that ruined the immersion for me for Scrutinized was when I think it was yourself, me, and Haley were playing it. We popped out of the study, looked around, and the doctor was there, poked his head around the corner, poked back, and it's like, he is in the cupboard. Do not look in the cupboard. And you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'll go to bed with this man in my cupboard. Like, it's that kind of weird stuff that breaks the immersion for me and just kind of, at that point, becomes a joke rather than like a horror game. But
well, I guess that's why I like horror as a kind of like an idea is that people find different things scary, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess someone could find, is it Subnautica where it's kind of like another
the fear of the scene stuff.
Yeah, I get like someone could find that much more scarier than someone else doesn't find that, who's just like who does scuba diving themselves maybe and just like it's like that would never happen, or they're already kind of like they know where the risks of going in normal water are, so a game like that may not be scary to them, or maybe they do find it scary because they do it. But I've never scuba dived before, so maybe I don't really find that something like that scary because I've never done it. I don't understand the horror aspect of it, right? But everyone understands ghosts, so something like Phasmophobia, you're in a house, everyone goes inside houses, and the idea of a haunted house like transcends different media anyway, so that can be scary for people. But then again, Phasmophobia is type of thing like once you've seen a few of the scares, you don't get scared really as much anymore.
Exactly.
But it's the same for you mentioned, like if it's not grounded in reality, you're not going to find it as scary. But that's true for a lot of like horror films as well, where you can just find like it funny. You can find a horror film funny because it's just so not real. Like I don't find alien horror films scary at all because alien based horror films instead of just the Alien series. But I just think, like for me, it's not grounded in our current knowledge of the universe. It's not grounded in reality, so I don't find that very scary. But something like, I don't know, there's do you know what actually do it well is Japanese horror films do it quite well because they don't really go too far. Like it's all linked to reality and it all kind of links to something that people can like relate to. And so I think that's what make it scary. It's kind of like people would find a human, a kind of, I don't know, antagonist more scary than they would some random monster because a monster they don't understand, right? But a human antagonist, whether it's maybe like a serial killer trying to kill someone, or it's this humanoid ghost, you're much more likely to find that scary, I find, because you can link it to your understanding of what's real.
Well, it's also stuff like I think it's The Woman in Black is a really good example of this. It's like with the Harry Potter stuff, they set up really early predefined rules that just line up for the rest of the film, and I think that's what makes a film scary. So like Woman in Black is Daniel Radcliffe going to go sort out some papers for a company to close down his house or to do whatever with his house. There's a thing about the Woman in Black who basically terrorizes the town, but her main control is like in the house, in the domain, and he keeps having to go back each day to go do something. And I think it's that kind of like building of tension and releasing it. So that's really good. I think when like most horror films break that tension or that kind of like break or build up too high, it does get to a point where you almost have to laugh. Like I think that's where a lot of horror films kind of forget about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like how you referred to him as Harry Potter, as in like he's the elder Harry Potter that goes into this house and it's all he's just lost his magic. And
He's lost his magic. I thought I said Daniel Radcliffe, but
you
that's fine.
You said afterwards, but you mentioned
okay.
Harry Potter before.
No, that's fine. So like I did laugh because he goes into the house and like they set up predefined rules, like she can affect the town outside, but she mainly runs around in the house, and you're like, okay, it's fine. You see her in like the town outside, you get to see some of the bits and bobs, and it's done really well. And then it goes into the house, and that's when you know it's going bad. Like I think if they did, I can't remember. I feel like they've done that in a horror game before, where during the day you get to do stuff, and then during the night you've got to go back into like a haunted castle. Like I think that'd be a really fun idea, like a dungeon diving vampire hunting game, where during the day you have to go to the town, stock up on supplies, stock up on other bits and bobs, and then during the night you have to like push through this haunted like giant labyrinth of like a castle where you have to like push through, light up stuff to keep the vampire away, open windows so that way during the day he can't roam around until the night. And then you're basically slowly trying to build up this ability. So during the day, one of the days you can go find him and stake him. Like that'd be cool because each night you almost have to take a deep breath and go, right, I've got all my kit, I've got all my gear, I'm ready to go back in and kind of push through a bit because you'll be roaming around. But then during the day, I know there's other people running around and I can't let them know. So I've got to go to the shops and buy things and do other bits and bobs as well. Like that's like smart because there's rules, there's an understanding, and you almost build up the tension yourself every time you go into a horror game. But I feel like a lot of horror games now, it's like you're constantly on that edge of tension that you never actually get a break from it to the point where you don't get scared anymore or you get like burnt out.
It's not an idea of like a safe room in Resident Evil. In that kind
exactly.
Of yeah, you have that downtime. So when you're outside of it, you know you're kind of could be in danger or whatever's going on. Yeah. I think there's so many different types of horror games, and I think I prefer like the shorter one than like the long exploring so many different, an entire. I guess it's like I think Amnesia: The Dark Descent holds up then. I don't know if I would like it now as much because it just would like feel like it was just going on and on and on in that kind of sense.
Yeah. I think that sort of stuff makes sense because like short horror games work well because again they're just enough to kind of freak you out, scare you, and then kind of finish and then kind of do a couple of builds and drops. Like PT is a really good example. It immediately just kicked you off, and every time you went back into that room to then reset the next hallway, you knew something was always going to happen. Like the fact that they started building up with like you walk in, the sound's screwed, there's a baby crying, you're like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. You then do another loop. The baby's still crying. The door's slightly ajar. You walk up to the door and it's like, press triangle to zoom in. You're just like, oh no. And each time you walk around, you can't do it until you press the triangle to zoom in. Yeah. And then it's that kind of stuff, which is like teaching you how to play the game, teaching you the rules, but then also like saying you have to do this in order to move forward. But it's almost like pulling you out of your comfort zone to do it as well, which I think is really smart. But I just feel like for a £40 to £50 video game now for a horror, it needs to be something like Until Dawn. Did you ever play that?
Yeah, but that came out. I think I played it when it's free on PlayStation. But the thing is, like, again, like that's like just such a long game. I just don't think I don't think I like horror games that are just like long like that. I like short and sweet, like something that doesn't drag on. Because often those, like, even was Until Dawn even scary? I don't know. Obviously, it's like it's based on like the classic kind of old horror film type, but obviously an interactive version of it. I don't know. I don't think I found it scary at all.
I mean, it had like some good ideas because like for the entire first half of the game, you're like, oh, there's a serial killer running around this mountain trying to murder people. And they did the classic like second act twist where it's like, it's not a serial killer. There's a bunch of Wendigos running around. And if they bite people, they turn them into Wendigos as well. Like that's a great idea.
That's not grounded in reality for me. That's why I don't think I found it scary.
No, but like,
I think the original concept, I get the twist. I completely get it, and it's like because it's built on some Indian burial ground or something like that. But I just don't know. I think it's for me. I think that's why I didn't enjoy it so much because it started off well and strong, and then it kind of went into that kind of generic horror trope of a monster.
No, that's fair enough. But yeah, I think it's weird. They have to time everything and then kind of meet expectations. Because for me, Subnautica just looks like an adventure RPG game. It doesn't seem to be like that horror thing. But I've seen some people play Subnautica and they're like physically shaking because they look out and just see the depths of the ocean and like the fact it almost like fogs, like you can't see what's out there.
Yeah.
And then the screams of I want to say like behemoths or Goliaths or something like that. But yeah, you got what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, I've become fascinated recently with there's two people, they're two Japanese people who they go under the tag Chiller's Art, and they make loads of games on Steam. And most of them are actually quite well received. I think it's kind of like a cult following, but they're kind of like shorter games. I think they're like a maximum of like 2 hours really, but they're all based in a very like typical smaller map style, telling a story, and all mostly like the concepts and the kind of principles are all grounded in reality. So that's like a good group of games, very cheap games as well, like £4. Like those are the kind of like, I don't know, it is an art piece game, and it's like time's been spent on it. But I just don't know. AAA horror games, I just don't think are for me, really.
No, but yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to get to. Like AAA games, I don't think can do it. But reading this, it's like Closing Shift is a Japanese horror game about a girl on a closing shift, and you're like, okay, that's kind of scary because I think it's like relatable, right? Everyone's done a closing shift for like a retail store or a customer service store, and it's dark outside. You're by yourself, and you hear a bump, or you hear like a clang, or you hear a pop, and you're like, what's that? And your mind starts racing. Like I think it homes into those primal fears of like home invasion. You don't know what's out there at night, or like things beyond your control and understanding. Like that sort of like primal fears that they do really well.
Yeah. I think that's why, like, I think like those, I've become to love like those type of games, and why I like mention Iron Lung, because again, it's that kind of short, I guess 1 hour kind of experience that you look for. I think, I mean, I look for, but I think like in so many games, I think like they just go on and on and on, and by that point you've kind of lost interest. And I think for a horror game, you know, you don't have a horror film that lasts 8 hours, you know, because
no, exactly.
Point you just wouldn't find it scary anymore. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these AAA games, is that they are telling a longer story, but then by that point you've lost interest, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I think for me, one of my favorite horror games, or one of the most interesting ones, but it kind of feeds into this AAA, you can't do it all the time, is the Resident Evil Biohazard. Like it's number 7, I want to say. The fact the first, I don't know, hour to 2 hours of the game, you're terrified because you're running around this house pitch black in the middle of the night, you're seeing things are moving, all that sort of stuff. Perfect. But then they give you a torch and a gun, and that it becomes like a action survival game than like a horror game, right? It's just like, I think you need to do short, sharp, kind of like psychological whacks, or you need to kind of make it a walking simulator where you can't do much else, but then shorten it down. You can't do like you said, these sagas of films that last 8 to 12 hours and just seem to keep them going.
Yeah, like people don't like people lose. I think like a good horror film is one that's 90 minutes. I think like that's like the best. I think anything that's longer, I mean, yeah, fine, 2 hours maybe, but I just think that you don't see horror films longer than that time, because they're just, you know, you've got to be concise. You've got to make sure that what you do hits well during the time period you have. I mean, you could say like something like Haunted of Hill House was quite good, and that obviously runs over a number of different episodes. So I guess there's a kind of a break between, and the story just changed.
Yeah.
But then after that, the Blythe Manor one, that was awful. The Blythe Manor one, I hated it. So yeah.
Well, I was going to say the Haunting Hill House like did it very smart. They had like a horror theme for each episode. Like the overarching stuff was like, oh, there's a story going on, absolutely fine. It's the mom's possessed and goes nuts in the house. You're like, okay, then it's like the crooked man, or like the guy who's writing all that sort of stuff, and they kind of break it down to like the jump scare horror, which is like the bent neck lady, the uncomfortable person who's following you, with like the tall man with the hat, and then just the idea that like you're almost trapped in there, like that sort of stuff. So it was really kind of good. But again, they always hit 1 or 2 big scares, but the rest of it was there, and it was like silly stuff like, if you really want to be scared, here's 25 times you've seen ghosts in the Haunting of Hill House without realizing it. Like my partner and I like watched it, and we were like, okay, this is scary. And then she was like, oh, do you know there's ghosts in the background of all the house shots? And I was like, and like we got to the point where we were looking in the background, like most of the episodes we've seen, and you just see like people in the corners, faces, and you just be like, oh, this is horrifying, because they've just been there the entire time, but you haven't realized.
Yeah. I mean, funny you mentioned that. There's actually I was working at a conference in America, and there's a picture of me like with my back to this building. It's like it's a conference center that's up a few flights, a few stories in America, and in the middle of Cleveland. And there's a picture of me like sitting at this table by this window, And in this background, like on the building opposite, is just this figure in one of the windows. So you can't make it out. And I look at it sometimes and go like, I wonder if I was being haunted at that moment in time. But it's just like it's such a weird picture. I have to dig it out and send it to you. But it's like, yeah, that kind of thing is like you don't realize it's there till afterwards, right? And that's quite a good concept. I like that. Yeah, I think that's like clever for it. But then I'm sure in some points, it's like without even realizing it, but some people would, as you're watching, you would have maybe found 25% of those, maybe if you were paying attention, I would say. So I think that's good. It just keeps it up and keeps that kind of momentum of the film going.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's, I think we talked about this, like there's some games where they show you trailers or you play like a playable trailer of it and they show you the jump scares. But then when you watch the real thing, the jump scares don't happen. And you're just like, oh no. Because you're expecting it to happen. You're like, was it your views being like subverted from what you normally expect? You're like, oh, around the corner it's gonna be a jump, 3, 2, 1, nothing, and it just pauses, and you're like, oh, this is even worse. Like that's kind of good horror, but I think video games at the moment just really struggle with it because it's just a long format. I'd rather do 6 mini horror games than a big horror game for like £65, like each different person's stories feeding into a bigger one, than just like one person, I don't know, going into a spooky abandoned hospital for 12 hours by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like people have different perspectives of what they find scary, and I think that's the good thing is that you can find what you want, and there are so many different horror games out there that you'll find something that I'm sure you'll like and find scary.
So, I think one of the things I'm starting to realize is I don't know if content creation is down to luck, or if you should be copying people, or if you should be driving out your own niche or niche in the industry, right? So this is, I think, podcast number 5 for us, and I've done the other ones today, like marketing, kind of editing, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm really struggling to try and work out where to get a footing, or if it's just down to chance, or if it's down to like so many extraneous factors to the point where almost your head wants to explode. I don't know if you felt that as of yet. Or had something where you're trying to do something and it's just like nothing's grabbing.
I just turn up for the podcast, don't I, really? So I mean, like, it hasn't really hit me, I guess. But I think like you kind of mentioned like all the different aspects and like what do you do, but then you just end up like not doing anything, as in like you're not true to what you're making. No one wants to watch, like, people. Okay, so there's like the argument that people want to find things they like and that they'll stick to what they like, fine. But then also there's people who are like, I already got this person I watch. Why do I want another who does the same thing? Like, it's kind of pointless. And also there's no like originality, which makes it more interesting. So, I mean, my kind of thoughts would always be just make what you want and like don't think about anything else.
Yeah, no.
Because I guess at the end of it, if like someone, like, you should do what you want, because it doesn't make a difference in my mind, because if you're faking it, then it's irrelevant. Like, you shouldn't have made it in the first place, because then you're not actually interested. You're not making something you're interested in or the way you would have made it. So what's the point?
No, that's fair. And this isn't me like moaning or whining, by the way. It's just like trying to work out how to get that like that handhold or that foothold. Because when sometimes like we've done like videos in the past or podcasts in the past, we've like hit something and it's caught really nice and well, and then all of a sudden you do the exact same thing for the next time and it hasn't like caught as well. I think it's just trying to work out almost like that golden ratio of just like trying to get the title right, trying to make it like not clickbaity to the point where you're almost wanting to like gag on yourself, but then also make it interesting so people want to do it. And then it's also trying to make it appealing visually from an audio perspective, from a sound perspective, and all that sort of stuff. And then trying to like slowly start to layer those things on. And I feel like sometimes if you don't change minuscule things throughout the entire process and make bigger changes, it like debunks everything.
I think it's quite like, I think people are going to find like stuff. People are going to look for something they want to watch or listen to. And if they find it, like they'll look at it straight away, and either they should be able to judge, I would say, within the first 2 minutes whether they want to continue. It's kind of like if I watch a new show on Netflix, right? And I start watching it and I go, do you know what? This isn't for me. And I'll just stop watching it. And that's fine. And, I don't see a problem. It's not like the person who made it was like out to make sure I watched it. I think people will just find, I think maybe it's not about like whether people get it in the first, as in people start watching it, because I think more often than not, if someone's presented with something with like all the algorithms that run on these websites and systems, that more like they'll start doing it because they've been presented with it. So it's not really that's the problem. What is the problem is someone being presented it with it in the first place, right? And that's what you need to get hold of, because I guess if you're starting from nothing, how do you get your first couple of people watching or listening? And I think that's probably the trickiest bit. But how good what you talk about in your general podcast or video, past the subject line of your video, it's irrelevant, because someone would have given up someone would have never watched it if they're never presented with it in the first place. So I feel like you've got to just share it with people first and find the right communities, and then you can start. If you really want to like have a good production, then you can change it afterwards. But having good production doesn't affect how many people see your video in the first place, right?
No, but I mean, like going back to your algorithm conversation, it's just like it's trying to get like a catchy enough title. Like I think we joked about it yesterday. It's like I played 100 days of Satisfactory, and this is where I got to. Like you're trying to look for catchy stuff, but almost not copy and paste it, if that makes sense. So you're trying to like look for like a topic, and you're like, okay, I can try and do this and try and mess around with this, and you try and pick like a thumbnail or like a image to kind of draw attention to it. And I do find that you can like hit on gold sometimes, but then you try and replicate said gold and it doesn't turn out to be gold, it turns out to be bronze instead, and you're like, this is really not infuriating, but it's almost like it kind of like sets you back. You kind of go, right, how do I redo this again, and how do I relook at this going forward? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. But I think like, but then, I guess like, was it even right in the first place? It probably was something else you're not seeing. Like it might have just been the topic, or that, just to bring back to that 100 days thing. If people watch loads of I did 100 days in this game type videos on YouTube, and you've got it in your title and you've done it, then they'll be presented with that most likely as well. But you probably already got to have some views on the video for it to actually be relevant in the algorithm anyway. So I don't know. I think like you've got to have views to start with in order for any of that to be relevant in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think it's also just interesting because there's like so much content being created at any one point of time. Like there was a crazy statistic that there's like thousands upon hundreds of thousands of years now online for YouTube going forward. Like you could watch like multiple thousands of lifetimes worth of content, and half of it won't even be seen. And I think for me, it's interesting trying to see how to climb to the top of that using certain techniques, phrases, and kind of terminology, and then build into that. Or like there seems to be two ways of doing it. It's either like you work in a small niche for like months to years and try and build up that kind of like rapport with the audience, stuff like that, and you take a leap to dive into like a bigger audience pool and hopefully going to pull some of the guys with you, or you kind of fire out randomly with a degree of certainty, and then eventually you end up hitting gold or picking up something, or side-swiping someone else as a creator and kind of hitting onto their audience as well. It's just interesting to try and work out how to like pick each one by one and kind of do it, because I guess it would also apply to like video game creation to a degree, right?
Right. Yeah. But then a lot of like, it's about marketing, right? But you're not going to spend ages marketing your YouTube video in the same way you would like with a product you're trying to sell, which is like your game or movie, let's say. So I feel like they're very different things, but I think people think too early on about trying to gain the algorithm right before actually having any views, because the algorithm will never care about you unless you've got some pre-existing views already. So that's about more like building up subscribers, and to do that you've got to do your own marketing for your videos, whether it's like posting the link on social media, using then hashtags on social media for it to be found, that kind of stuff. So you got to use other services in order to link your video for it to be more relevant. I think otherwise it's just a waste of time.
No, exactly. And I think this is what I was trying to like slowly drive out of this conversation, which was like, as you said, you almost need to market it as like each individual product going forward. And to do that, you kind of need to do a couple of different things. You need to work your way through it. And then also, like you said, suggest it to the right people, suggest it to the right forums, and kind of market it as like a good level of content. Because I feel the level of content from when we were, I don't know, like 9 or 10 looking at YouTube versus now it's just like fathoms different in terms of like the editing, the thumbnails, the kind of color grading, the sound, the visuals, and all that sort of stuff to where it was like 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, but then that's like to keep people already watching, right? You've got to keep the good content, but that won't affect the algorithm, any of that stuff, right? So that's what I mean. Like you should focus on making the content you want to make first in the way you want to make it, less about all the different whatever thumbnails or whatever it is, because that's not going to change any. The only thing that's going to change is if someone sees your video and if they're going to click on it. But none of that is relevant really to begin with, because they're never going to see it in their recommended because it has 0 views. So you've got to try and get the views first in order for that to be relevant.
Yeah, no, I agreed. And this was interesting. So obviously we're doing this now, which is like our podcast, and we're kind of like building our like structure and kind of like theme and vibe of what we are. And then it's, again, like you said, it's trying to work at different avenues at different paces. So you're almost like, right, so this is how it needs to look. This is how it needs to sound on a frequent basis, and this is how it needs to kind of go out on like a frequency. It's just interesting to try and almost like work out the science to it to a degree.
Yeah. I think there obviously is a science to it, but it's the kind of, you know, it's the chicken and the egg in terms of what comes first. You know, is it the content or is it like how you're marketing it? Like, you know, because in some, like I said, like no one's going to listen to it if it's not marketed because it's nowhere to be found, right? But then if people are presented with it, then, or, you know, if people do see it and start listening or watching and it's not good, then effectively they're never going to watch it again. And that was you know, you've wasted that kind of click, I guess. So it's about capturing the audience as well. So I think like there's different ways about it, but I think people should always focus first on make something you want to make. Obviously you've got to market it from then on because it's not going to just appear to people by magic. And once you've got enough people, then you can start thinking, okay, well, I've got a good number of views now on my videos. How are more people going to see it? Well, I need to now gain the algorithm in order for that to work because I've kind of reached the cap of what I can do normally. And that's kind of where I see it really.
So what do you think the like 3 like defining factors for you to watch something is? Like for me, it's like, is the thumbnail interesting? Is the sound good? And how long is the video for me personally?
It's strange that you didn't mention, and would be my number one, is what's the video actually going to be about?
I'm pretty game to like most things. If it's like, if it looks interesting and looks something that I'm like either interested in learning about or just something that just like, I kind of go, that looks kind of cool. I'll just click on it and just watch it. But for me, if like I also watch like videos from people that I watch frequently, but I'll look at their thumbnail and I'll look at what it looks like and I'll be like, this isn't interesting for me at the moment. But I don't know. For me, it's all about how it looks versus like what the content's about.
Yeah.
Because I could listen to like a 4-hour video on, I don't know, this really particular thing. Like I think I watched one on like, what was it? It was like a crime documentary thing about a guy who's talking about this girl who went missing for like 4 weeks, but it turned out she was in like her parents' house hidden. Never watched crime, never watched anything like that before. Thumbnail just looked interesting. And I was like, okay, I'll give that a click. And I think I watched it for like 40 minutes. It wasn't a topic I would normally go into. I'm normally more like video essays, games, and all that sort of stuff. But it was just something that just interested me. Clicked it, watched it, and I was like, okay, that's kind of good. And then tried to watch 3 others back to back, and I just couldn't get interested in the same topic again.
Yeah, but I guess it's like time and place as well for people, like whether they feel like watching it. It's like, I'm mostly like, I mean, I'm looking at my YouTube homepage now, and actually I've scrolled down quite a significant way through, and I don't think there's a single video I actually want to watch. But like, that's the way it goes sometimes. But then I'll, you know, tomorrow I'll load it and there'll be a recommended thing I am interested in. But again, it depends on like my mood and what I want to watch and what I'm doing at the time. Like, am I just having something on in the background to listen to, or am I gonna have some food? So I usually, if I'm eating, I'll watch something food related on YouTube. So like, I think it just depends really. Like, I think everyone's different, and we've already spoken about like the YouTube rabbit hole. I think it was in our first episode. So yeah, I think it's I don't know. I don't really think about it much. I just kind of was like, I'll just watch what I want to watch, and I'm sure people do the same. And I'm sure really in some way people don't really want to think about what's actually going on behind the scenes to present them with stuff, because then you realize how much data is stored about you no matter what you click on.
No, that's
So
fair.
I've actually found one video now, which is I played EverQuest for 100 hours. Should you ? By Josh Stripeface. So I mean that's a possible video, but yeah, like that's only because like in general I've been playing more WoW MMOs. I played Final Fantasy a bit as well the other weekend. So like all of that is all kind of relevant. And so like it has an effect on a knockoff effect of like what I want to watch. So yeah, I think it all has something to play for, doesn't it? Really, in the algorithm.
Yeah, no, exactly.
If you were designing a restaurant, what restaurant would you design and why?
I think I'd probably go for like an experienced restaurant.
Okay.
So I don't know. I like the idea of restaurants that kind of do the whole like you eat in darkness, or you get like, I don't know, flavor profiles based off what wine you're drinking and all that sort of stuff. I think like the quirky restaurants are kind of cool. Because each time you do them, you get like a different flavor or a different like response to it, and it kind of keeps the customers fresh to a degree.
So an expensive restaurant.
No, it's more like an art piece restaurant. Doesn't make any sense. So it's not like a atypical restaurant where you're going to sit down and eat your food. It's going to be like you sit down, you talk about what like things you like, and the chef makes it for you. But it's almost like a personalized experience versus like a churn out as many customers as you can through and through. Either or like a breakfast place.
Sound expensive. That does sound expensive.
Yeah, either like a breakfast coffee. What do you call it? Like a 24-hour bar thing that they have in America, like I don't know, the cafes.
You mean like the like a diner?
Yeah, the diner. There we go.
You want a diner? Okay. I guess that's just like the classic. Yeah, I guess that's like a classic American diner restaurant thing, isn't it? That you just find. That's both. You've gone from one extreme of like expensive, refined taste for whoever's come in, and the next one is we'll serve you some coffee and pancakes. Basically, is what you've done.
I think for me, it's just all about like the story in between, right? So like if you do like a high class kind of like you sit down, you talk about the flavors you like or what colors you like on this palette thing, and they bring you food based off it. That's kind of cool because it's something to talk about. And then also diners like. There's so many people traveling in it in like a 24-hour basis. Like there's loads of stories still over here, and there's loads of like customers that are coming through. Like I think that's probably for me what I'd enjoy. I don't mind the idea of like having frequented customers, but I'd get bored if it was like the same 55 people coming in every 2 weeks.
I love how you've kind of like. My idea was like, what restaurant would you create? And then, I don't know, like leave. But yours is like, no, I will live in the restaurant. I will spend my entire life on the counter serving coffee and making food for people, which I kind of like. I like that. It's a nice idea. But yeah, I guess we had like different elements of like, I'm going to own this restaurant. Yeah, I'm going to own this restaurant and run it. Like my life depends on it. And I'm like, yeah, I'll create that. I'm sure I'll find a manager. They can do it. Get a chef. All good.
Oh, no,
next project.
I'd have like a manager and stuff, but it's just like, for me, those would be my two favorite types of restaurant to kind of like be on a fly on the wall on, if that makes sense. Because you get like, I don't know, take this imaginary one, which I'm just going to call palette. Like you pick 4 or 5 different colors and they bring you out your starter, main, dessert based off these 4 or 5 different colors. That'd be really weird and quirky. And you get like a variety of different people coming in. You get some like really weird food critics. You'd get people who are just like, sod it, let's give it a go and try some different food. And then it's taking you out of your comfort zone. And then the breakfast place is like, you get a wide variety of people. You get some people who are just on the road. You get some people who are just like there for breakfast. You get some people who are there who just for like a pit stop and a coffee, like that sort of stuff. Like what type of restaurant would you do?
I guess mine would be less about who comes in and more like, I guess, like what food do I want to have there? But I think I like the idea of like a restaurant where it's like very simplified things. So like if you break down, I don't know, like a burger is quite simple, like it can be quite simple. Obviously, like you can go to these restaurants and they have like some weird stuff going on with their burgers. But I think like just really simple, what sounds simple, but made in a certain way that's just like the best quality like meat of like a burger you can get. So it's got like the right quantity of like fat, the different elements of like the cow, like it's all like taken in and made like the perfect burger. And like what is simple basically, I would like a restaurant where you would go there and you realize that your home cooking and something that you would probably normally make at home is just terrible in
Oh my God.
comparison to this restaurant, right? Do you know what I mean? Like
So
you go like this lasagna is the best thing I've ever tasted in my life, you know, and you're never gonna have a lasagna about that. And I think like it's just simple food, but done to perfection with the best quality ingredients.
So it's like basic food you can do at home, but it's done so well you feel bad about you cooking at home.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what I want. Because then
Isn't that like the plot to the menu or something, or am I misremembering?
no, well, I think the menu. People die in them. I don't want a horror restaurant. Everyone dies in the menu apart from one person, don't they? That's what no. In that film, he tries to serve like all like different fancy food, but all the person wants is a burger, right? And so basically, the test was like to the chef, you can make all this, but can you just make a good burger? Basically, that's like that ending. That's a spoiler for that. We've spoiled the film now, but yeah, it's effectively what it comes down to. But yeah, no, I think like, yeah, a restaurant which is just like the simplest food, something that you would go, I could just buy that in a supermarket. But actually, once you taste it, you're like, oh my word, I don't think I could ever have food like this ever again.
Yeah,
you know?
so it's like a steak. It's like a burger, but it's like handmade brioche with like a certain butter and like a certain type of flour that's rare. Then you get like a certain like rare cheese that's been like sat fermenting in like a farm for 12 years. Then you get like some A5 Wagyu beef and the cow's been hand reared and brought over by walking. And like the lettuce is like the best lettuce you can buy that's been like, I don't know, hydroponically grown for the last 12 years after a certain seed. Like the best stuff, right? But it's like burger and fries.
Yeah, it's bad for business, but I like the idea that actually you can only ever attend this restaurant once. So basically, the person's life is just an utter disappointment from that moment onwards when they leave the restaurant.
Well, they're allowed to be in there as long as they
in.
want, but they just can never come back in. Like once you've been scanned, that's it. You can never come back in, but you can leave whenever you want. You can stay in there for like weeks if you can afford it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It'll be like people want to make sure they can just keep getting the best food, and that means they'll spend a lot of money while they're there because they know they'll never get anything like it ever again.
What would you name the restaurant? Like Expectations or something like that?
Yeah, I guess like I don't know, because I guess the expectation. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would want to call it expectations because I guess maybe you just call it disappointment.
Oh my God.
Because it's the plate. Like obviously, the restaurant's not a disappointment because when you leave the restaurant, you'll turn around for one last time and you'll look at the name of the restaurant and it'll just be disappointment. And you know from that moment on, it's right there in front of you. It awaits you.
I don't know how I feel about that because like it's one of those places you can't like go to try and invite your friends. It's like this is a one-time like experience. That's it. Good luck.
Oh, this is the marketing strategy. You know, like it's easy. Like you can only ever go once, so it's like a fear of missing out, right? And that means you want to make sure you go. Yeah. So you got like you want to make sure that you go with the people you want to as well. So like you maybe bring more people. Again, good for business. Yeah, you have to hand in your phone at the beginning, so you can't take pictures of your food either.
Fair enough. Okay, so super expensive place, one-time entry only. Yeah. Bring your credit card, be ready to go, but that's it afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think my ideal restaurant would be.
That sounds like a horror film.
Full disappointment. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is it? I'm offering people the best food they could ever have.
It feels like a weird Ghibli film where, like, you finish eating your food, you turn into one of the workers, and then that's how you pay it off, like the rest of your time.
Maybe that's the only way. That's the only way you could ever try the food again is to learn how to cook the best food and become a chef in the restaurant.
Yeah, or if you're not good enough, you just work in the kitchen. You never leave the kitchen because there's only like one set of kitchen staff that wait there for like the dregs and like the scraps of food. It feels like was it Little Nightmares, like that kind of dystopian idea?
Yeah, it's quite a dystopian idea, I guess, isn't it? It would make quite a good film, though, wouldn't it? You know, someone building that's the restaurant they're building. You just watch them build this restaurant, and people come in, and then slowly people come. You know, people come in, and then you see you like you know you're on the weekend and you see this person, and their like life has fallen apart since they went to the restaurant, and they just can't get. You know, they just can't get the food they wanted anymore.
Yeah, and then as like a person who goes into the restaurant, he eats the food, decides that he wants to learn more about it. So he stays there working as like a kitchen person for free, just so he can get that taste again of food.
Yeah, I bet staff retention would be good.
Yeah, yeah.
If you work there for 3 months, it means when you quit the job, you go somewhere else, you're guaranteed one final meal. But you obviously would never be able to get your job back because, as I said, once you leave the restaurant, there's no more coming in.
Can you imagine trying to like hire chefs? It's like, oh, I'll work here. It's like, cool. This is your bedroom. This is your house. You can never leave.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's free accommodation, so it's like, but you can literally never leave. Yeah. I think this goes into slavery now, so maybe this is a bad idea, but definitely the disappointment of people they can never come back in. I think I'm down for.
Okay,
but I don't think the modern day slavery idea should be integrated into this restaurant.
No, but mass hysteria and mass like disappointment. Everyone else is all good though.
Yeah, because also, you know, like you're also controlling the narrative because no one can take pictures of this food, and it's only from like word of mouth experience and how good it is. So again, like you might release like no one actually know what it's like inside for real unless they've been in themselves.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. You should also sell the fingerprints to the Chinese as well. So that's also a good way of getting money. So yeah. So sometimes we see a lot of like films remade. And actually recently, I guess we've seen some games remastered. Some have been completely scrapped and just like, you know, they've just made a new game and just called it the original title. And just kind of like forgotten about the previous games. But I was wondering if you could bring back one game and remake it from scratch in like a modern engine. You could probably tidy up some of the game mechanics, definitely some of the mods, obviously, the graphics. What would it be?
I've got one that's
okay.
coming to my head now. So it's between Dawn of War.
Okay.
And
which is a Warhammer.
Yeah.
Warhammer game.
Well, I think Dawn of War is probably the choice. I think for me,
like there's 30 Warhammer games coming out this year, but we want to bring back.
I mean, it's like Dawn of War is like the OG Warhammer game where it's like strategy, lots of stuff like that, like takeover points. It's like RTS. It's beautifully done. The units are really cool. You feel like you embody it all. I would like it to be like a bigger game with like you can kind of expand and add on to what you normally do, because it's normally like a 1v1 or like worst case a 4v4 map where like it's all going sideways. I would like them to remake it in the style of Warhammer Total War to that degree, in that like scale and grandeur, but keep it like a RTS based building game. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, interesting.
Because I would have it like all the factions, all the sub factions. You can choose how big of a like resource pool you want to use, and then like how far you want to like extend it. So like let's say, I don't know, it's almost like a planet-sized war where you can take over city after city, but then you can also be like losing cities and like using different weapons, and like you can push on different fronts, like that kind of like grandeur scale of like with the Warhammer 40k universe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mixed with like hero characters that you can see like leading the charge and all that sort of stuff. That'd be amazing, because like when you play the tabletop, you do get those moments where like, I don't know, a single Tyrannid or a single Space Marine or like a single Adeptus Mechanicus unit bulldozes the way through stuff and everything's just clanging off it side to side, left, right. Like you know how it does in like Company of Heroes, or I think it's Ironclad, like that sort of idea where you can just get stupid luck and a single unit can almost like mow down the entire squadron. Like those moments are cool, and it kind of adds to it. But that'd be my choice.
I see. Okay. I think gave good, I guess like a good example of like what I guess like, but in some way you are like, I guess you've gone for the complete like remaster. Right? No, I wouldn't know. No, remaster would be like remake, like as in it's kind of hard to explain it, but remaster would be making it as it was, right? But just modernized it.
Oh, versus like a reboot.
You've kind of rebooted that particular game and like try to take things, make it different, right?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a perfect way to do it.
You are remaking it. Yeah, you're remaking it, but the same kind of concept that was originally there, but obviously with the changes you want. I think mine would be Time Splitters 2.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I think, you know, Time Splitters, the greatest FPS of all time, both story and also from a multiplayer aspect. I think like if Time Splitters was around now, like as a multiplayer game, it's just stupid fun. Like compared to every other game, which is like, I don't know, it's just like every other FPS multiplayer game at the moment, like tries to take itself too seriously. And like that's why we need Time Splitters, because it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like you got loads of maps, loads of different characters. You know, you just go into the server and have fun. And I think like that's what I miss about that kind of thing. Like, I always like the idea of like, oh, I want to play a multiplayer FPS game. But then like Counter-Strike 2 is a disaster at the moment, and it's like people take that too seriously. Rainbow Six, very, very, you know, various things are okay with it, but also things are just like not great. Again, people take it too seriously. I'm not playing Call of Duty, I mean, didn't they just add like Diablo characters in Call of Duty recently or something?
I gave up with Call of Duty when I couldn't, like, when I got fucking wrecked on what's it called, Warzone.
Oh, Warzone.
I gave up in like that kind of period, like university period for me. Like, I don't know. It depends how you like. I think Time Splitters is like your spy versus spy, like beautiful time in Xbox's life where they made really good games. No one really complained about them, and they hit the nail on the head. But then they almost had like their sunset period. Does that make sense?
I don't know, but the thing is, like with that, it's like you didn't really have like the full multiplayer experience that you could have now with the Time Splitters, right?
No, that's fair.
I think like especially on PC, it would be like a completely different game. That's what I would say. Like Time Splitters on PC, modernized, great graphics, like Unreal Engine graphics, and yeah, like a good multiplayer system just to play against people, and obviously the story mode would be good. Yeah, I just feel like that's what I would want, and I don't think we could say well, why don't you just play this, because I just don't think there is something that competes with what that could do with like a remade Time Splitters personally.
Do you want like the aim to fix though, where it's like instead of pointing into the middle of the screen, you can like...
Oh, absolutely, the game should be fixed. That's that works for consoles. It would not work for PC. So yeah, that would be like the change I would make, is actually make it like an actual aiming system, I guess. But everything else, like the theme of Time Splitters is great. I think it's the sad thing. It's like such a good IP, and just like nothing's been done with it in years, and it could have. There's been so many like rumors over the years of like, yeah, that, you know, this person's now got it, or you know, this team's could start working on it, but nothing's come from it. And the closest it is there's like some people who've been trying to remake it, but I think it, like, obviously it's not official license, so it's kind of like it's just a fan project really, so it's not really helpful. But also I think it's still made in CryEngine. I think they had to in order to not piss people off. So yeah, I want a Time Splitters 2, a modern game engine, and I just, yeah, a really good multiplayer, just mindless fun shooting as different random characters.
And you want a monkey with a crossbow, basically.
Yeah, I want to be the smallest possible character, so I have a small hitbox, so I can just be everyone. Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, so that would be my remake for sure.
And if you have any ideas for other remakes, please let us know in the questions below, or email podcasts@dungeoneers.tv.
Glad you got the email right.
I did that. Yeah, I got that right. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, nice.
I was like, it seems like a shameless plug I can use here quickly.
That's true. That's good. All right.
Cool. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds like a good podcast.
Discord, stop recording.
Well, thank you very much for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.